The seat taken?
Nobody's in the seat, then I ain't taking, son.
So this is, Sabacc?
Sabacc.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to Sabacc the Block. I am here with
Laura Kelly from Force Toast Podcast. Hi, Laura.
Hello, Ace. How's it going?
Good. It's going good. What a weird time in the Star Wars atmosphere, universe, whatever you want to call it. Last week, we had the Obi-Wan casting news. This week, we got a whole lot of debates online, I guess. I don't know. At least that's what I see on Star Wars Twitter right now. But again, not too much going on in the Star Wars news universe, but we do have a lot of Star Wars stuff to talk about. Laura Kelly, for some reason, I see a lot of Rogue One coming up on Star Wars Twitter. I don't know. Have you seen this, or is it just me seeing like Rogue One conversations come up?
You know, I feel like every once in a while it gets like sort of a like resurgence for whatever reason. And all of a sudden there's just like a smattering of Rogue One love. And I am here for that. However, I have not spent a ton of time on Twitter today. So I sounds like I missed out on all the fun because I would have jumped in if I had seen that. But I'm glad that you saw it because Rogue One, as we talked about the last time I was on your show, is my favorite Star Wars movie.
Let's talk about that. I'm so curious. Obviously, you probably have a million reasons, but why is it your favorite Star Wars movie?
I think for me, like, you know what, how everybody sort of has a like nostalgia thing where like, oh, I watched Return of the Jedi with my dad when I was growing up. And like, for me, I kind of have that with Rogue One, except like it was the first Star Wars movie that I went and saw the night it opened with a group of 10 people. So it was like, I missed that with Force Awakens. And so when it came out in 2016, Rogue One, I was really pumped to go have that like opening night experience, and I got it because it was amazing. That energy that we all miss right now because none of us can go see movies, or at least most of us can't. But that kind of energy was what I was really excited for. So it was awesome to get to feel that kind of for the first time. And I think part of that experience is why it has sort of stuck with me as my favorite.
Can I ask, what was the first like Star Wars movie that you got into? Or like
first movie that I saw?
What was the first one? No, like what was the first one that really drew you to the world? Because the first one I saw was like A New Hope, but the first one that drew me in was obviously Phantom Menace.
Gotcha. Yeah, the first one I saw was Phantom Menace, but the one that drew me in, I think, was Force Awakens, because that was around the time that I sort of jumped into Star Wars for the first time. Like I hadn't been into Star Wars at that point. Like I had sort of just missed it somehow in pop culture and decided to circle back and jump into all the movies and went and watched the original trilogy first, then jumped into the prequels. And that was around the time that that Force Awakens was sort of doing their initial marketing. So that was really what pulled me in and motivated me to go sit down and watch all of these to figure out what's going on in this world, because I think I'm going to love it. And I did.
As far as Rogue One goes, when it comes to all the characters, thank you, RB3, dying off, was that like a big deal for you watching the movie, or was that like part of the reason why you loved it?
It was, I think it was because I was shocked. I was so surprised because I sort of kept up with all the spoilers as that movie was getting marketed, and we were all kind of getting excited for it in the year before it came out. And I would not have guessed that all of like our sort of main character casts were actually going to eat it at the end of it. I that was one thing that was not spoiled for me, funny enough. So I was surprised. And I think part of the reason is that it is sort of a darker Star Wars film. I think of all of them, it seems it's definitely sort of tilts toward like the adult side, a little bit darker. And it overall is just, for me, it's just a really good war movie and really entertaining. So that, I think those reasons combined, kind of make it my favorite. But yeah, I wasn't expecting it. I thought it was a surprise, and I kind of liked it because there was no chance that Jyn was going to be Rey's mom.
Yeah, that was a weird theory going out there. For anyone who's watching right now, I haven't been ignoring you when I've been on my phone. I was currently looking up a picture that I found last night because I'm a weirdo. And it's me and RB3. And I don't take many pictures of myself at all. So this is a rare occurrence. But since it was like the Rogue One premiere, I took a picture of myself and RB3 at the premiere, and I don't know if you're going to be able to catch this on camera, but it's me.
Oh,
and
look at that!
And RBT.
You guys are like, why is there nobody in the theater with you?
I think it might have been like
it was very rainy that day. It was very.
It's also early. I think we were early too.
We were.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. But that's us at the Rogue One premiere, bro. What's up? What's up with that?
Wow. Yeah.
Me with my stash, my little goatee thingy.
That was in like West LA too. Yeah, that was great, man. That was a great time. Love seeing movies with.
I probably should have turned my phone like this. This probably would have been better, but yeah, that's us.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Yeah,
the widescreen version.
Not this.
That's
like,
amazing.
Yo,
weird
that smile.
Yeah.
Look at that smile, RB3.
Hey.
Yeah, that was quite a premiere. I can't lie. The experience, the feeling you had watching everyone get destroyed, I felt like it was significant because it didn't hit me until like maybe Bodhi is when I felt like, okay, everyone might die. Because I did feel like, all right, K2's gone, it's all good. Chirrut's gone, whatever, we still got, we got Diego Luna in the house, he's going to make it out. Jin's going to make it out. So it took me until maybe Bodhi when I was like, oh, damn, is everyone going to die? This is kind of intense.
They're really doing it.
What do you think of the, because I've been obviously watching Star Wars movies recently, but I've been noticing specifically with Solo and specifically with Rogue One, the big things coming out of those two films, they're the two spin-off films, right, Laura? But at the same time, they're the two most cut up, drawn up, changed hand in director, changed hand in post, ADR. There, you can hear some ADR in there. The script changes, actions change. Like it's the most like out of all the Star Wars movies, it's the two that are the most like, chopped up and kind of redone and then redid again and then restitched again. It's the most Frankenstein Star Wars movies. What do you think of like that of inside a Star Wars film? And what do you think about watching a film that's been clearly reshot over and over again?
I don't know if I have a good enough eye to sort of pick up on those things. Maybe a little bit with Solo. I thought it was more noticeable.
Feel it, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But with Rogue One, I didn't notice it until I was watching it. Like I was doing repeat watches. Like I think I saw Rogue One in theaters like 5 times, which in retrospect that's the most I've ever seen any movie in theaters. But I think that was a little bit much because that movie kind of like it weighs on you a little bit because it is such a sad ending. So that was maybe one too many. But I did notice in rewatches where you can kind of see scenes where like Jin's hair is a little bit different than it was in the shot before. And like little things like that are a lot more noticeable. But it really doesn't do anything to distract me from my love of the film. Honestly, and it's kind of strange because it usually takes a while for me to sort of, especially with something like Star Wars Rebels or Clone Wars, where you get the more episodic structure and you have more time to fall in love with the characters. With something like Rogue One, where it's just one and done, it was like more surprising to me than anyone that I really gravitated towards that film the most, because you really didn't get in a lot of time with these characters. And I really didn't read any of the novels leading up to Rogue One, but I even tried to go back and read them after and just kind of couldn't get into them. For me, it's just kind of, I'm just going to leave it where it is because for me, it's just perfect as is. And I love it.
So there's no part of you that would want to see the Edwards cut or something like that?
Oh, no, 100%. I would love to see that.
Oh, you would want to see it. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I want to see what happened because I remember hearing later that like the original, there's some version of the ending of Rogue One where there's like a wedding. It allegedly is like how something happens at the end, and the end of the movie was like a wedding, and I'm like, between whom? Like I still have no idea. I've given this a lot of thought. I'm like, that seems weird because the first time I saw the movie, I didn't even really pick up on the fact that there was like chemistry between them. I kind of that's one of the little things I kind of wish there wasn't. Like I just wish they could have been like two soldiers, two comrades, I didn't need the like shipping.
There's a little, little salt on there, little
extra,
sprinkling
of chemistry.
A little sprinkling. Yeah, I'm curious because the only thing we've seen is Arbitrary. I'll let you give a shot. The only thing we've seen is Jin and Cassian running on the beach with the files.
Yes.
But that's the only thing we've visually seen from the other cut. RB3, go ahead.
Well, I am when it comes to directors and recutting and like, you know, revisions and all that stuff, I'm a very big nerd when it comes to that stuff. So I dissected, especially when it was first coming out, I dissected very closely what I can conceive of a lot of differences, right? And followed it pretty closely as I thought I could. Now, I think what at least I have read is that, like, maybe I think the wedding thing, like you said, Laura, is something I think they had like scripted originally, and then I don't know if they actually filmed it, but I know like they did also have an ending. I know they also did have an ending where all the characters died, but like in very different ways too. And then you can actually see
that too, yeah.
And you can see that, and you can actually see that in like the original Rogue One trailer, because there's that scene in Rogue One where she is out on the edge of the ledge, and that's where like the movie ends, and her and Cassian, you know, explode into the thing. But if you watch the trailer, there's a whole TIE fighter that pops up like during that scene. Like, so part of me speculates, you know, maybe that's the point where when she got cooked, you know, Cassian probably got cooked somewhere else. Like, I just think I think the third act is really where the most of the reshooting happened. And I think for the first two acts, it wasn't necessarily reshot, but I think they definitely edited it down a lot, because I do feel like there was a bit of a longer movie in there that they trimmed down in Rogue One, which is good. Rogue One is actually my second favorite of the new series, right there behind The Last Jedi. So I really love. I don't love Rogue One, but I really enjoy it. But I also definitely can see where it was a little more. It wasn't like it's not like. It wasn't like ripped out of the hands of Gareth Edwards, because you could definitely still see his style and stuff there. But it was definitely, you could definitely tell the studio got a little involved with that for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually heard, I don't even know where I read this, but I read that Vader himself kills Cassian or something like that. I don't know if you guys did you guys hear that? Am I the only one who heard that? Someone in the chat, let me know. If I'm
I don't remember that, but interesting.
Yeah, he comes out like he does the Vader scene, but he kills like Cassian or someone we know, I guess. But I think it is Cassian he kills as he's giving away the plans, and they do the whole rest of that scene or whatever. But they felt like that was too dark, I think is what the notes was, the studio notes.
I think that's generally what I like read to and observed, is like it was too dark. And I do kind of feel that. I think like they definitely tried to make the happiest ending out of everyone dying as possible with that for sure. Like
a hug and stuff.
Yeah, hug. You know, they had the hero moment for oh boy. Yeah. So they did a lot to
cheer it.
Yeah, exactly. So I just think they did a lot to make it like feel crowd pleasing with the deaths. Whereas opposed, I think probably a less careful version of this movie will probably see all the characters die in really dark ways and kind of not leave it as like optimistic, you know. So
yeah, there would have been a lot, but I still kind of would have appreciated it. Part of me would appreciate it. It's interesting because I do feel like the Edwards to the Tony Gilroy cut is significant. Obviously, I still think the most significant, obviously, is the shirt I'm wearing, which is Solo. In the two versions there, between the Phil Lord and Miller cut and obviously the Ron Howard cut, the one we got. Obviously, as anyone else knows, I love the Solo we did get, but part of me was still so curious about the Lord and Miller cut, which I'm sure is scrubbed from every database in Lucasfilm. They're making sure no one's going to see that ever. They're not pulling a Warner Brothers for that, for the Snyder cut. They're not letting that happen at all. They're just making sure that's gone. But part of me always felt that. But part of me felt like the biggest thing that transitioned between that, and you could feel it in the movie, I don't know if you felt it, Laura, was like the tonal shifts where they're reading lines and they're coming out of moments. And you could tell like part of this might have been like, was playful, but now they're reading it seriously. Because Lord and Miller are known for making obviously comedies and making everything very, very silly. And that was the big criticism that that Lawrence Kasdan was pissed about on set, that he really hated that they made everything they wrote very silly, like even stuff that was serious, they made it silly. But part of me is still like, yo, I low-key would want to see the silly version of it. But you could tell, like, there's certain line readings that Kira gives and that Han gives that I felt were like, was this supposed to be a comedic beat? But they turned it into like, I missed you for so long. And she's like, I've missed you too. But I think that was supposed to be like, you know, like comedic, that meeting. I'm talking about the first light scene when they're meeting in first light. Like part of that feels like it's cut up to be like, wait a minute, there's something missing in between this scene where you could tell they were told to be very like lovey-dovey and serious, where I think Lord and Miller were telling them to just goof around and have fun. I don't know what you think about the Solo one.
I think a lot of what I remember hearing about Solo was that there was a lot of Lord and Miller encouraging improvisation on the spot, which, like, funny or not, Lawrence Kasdan wrote a script and probably didn't want that script messed with. You know, when you're all of a sudden telling your actors to improvise, you're just disregarding the script. And I think you're right in that specific scene. You can kind of feel that a little bit, I think, especially with Kira. And I remember Emilia Clarke talking about how, like, the main direction she was getting from Lord and Miller was like, you're supposed to be very film noir. And she's like, it's not a direction. Like, I'm going to need a little more. I need more than that of what you want out of this, which I imagine must have been frustrating.
For sure. But at the same time, I feel like, look at a movie like Thor Ragnarok, right? A film that I'm sure, you know, the MCU producers were like, all right, this is Thor putting the crown on his head and kicking ass. And then Taika comes in and he's like, yeah, but it's going to be like all improv and it's going to be like all jokes. And the theme is still there of like Thor putting the crown on his head and being king or whatever. But it felt like the whole movie was improvised. And it's considered to be one of the most critically well-accepted MCU films ever. And I love it. It's one of my, I put it in my top 3 MCU films.
It's the most rewatchable for me. I love it.
There you go. And it's one of those movies that I feel like you could feel like they're improvising, right? But even though you know they're improvising, you still kind of like it because you like the characters and what they're saying. I don't know. I still think there's a cut in there that would have worked. But you could definitely feel some tonal shifts in certain scenes for Solo. But those are the 2 movies I find it so interesting that are clearly the most cut up films. Say what you will of the sequels. I know a lot of people don't like them, but JJ wanted what he wanted in The Force Awakens. Obviously, we see some deleted scenes there. You can see that in the Blu-ray. And then obviously what we got from Rian Johnson, it really did feel like Rian Johnson got what he wanted in his film because it is like a 2.5-hour movie with The Last Jedi. And then obviously to The Rise of Skywalker, JJ got what he wanted for that as well, versus the 2 standalone films, which seemed to be the changing of the hands did feel like it was there. It's really well done though, the way they're able to pull that off. I find it so fascinating because it is really like tough to do, right? To like reshoot a film and then re-edit it and kind of change everything.
Expensive too.
Change it so much that they actually had to go through the DGA to do that. I don't know if you remember that, but they actually couldn't get that clearance without Lord and Miller sitting down and watching the Howard cut. And then they were given the option to actually fight in the DGA courts over their cut. But they relinquished that because they knew they were going to lose. Obviously, number 1, but number 2, they knew it was a different film. So there was no point in being like, hey, this is also my film, which is the opposite of what happened with Zack Snyder and Joss Whedon, which they claimed was a Zack Snyder film, but they clearly deleted everything he did and then just put Zack Snyder film, and it was nothing basically that he had in there as far as what he wanted. I don't know. I just find it fascinating, but it is actually like a DGA kind of thing. And one of the head guys at the DGA is actually Jon Favreau. This all comes back around, guys. I'm just being a weirdo right now, but sorry, it's too much coffee. But Jon Favreau actually makes a lot of those decisions as far as like who has full credit, who gets half credit, who has like a, directed by or co-directed by kind of thing.
I was going to say who gets a producer's credit. And that was
Producer's
what Lord
credit.
Miller ended up with.
Yeah.
So they got something,
Yeah, absolutely. And I still feel like there's a little bit in there that you could tell like this is a different movie. But I don't know. Yeah, Rogue One, a lot of people like it. You know what I love? I love The Last Jedi.
I also love The Last Jedi. It's my favorite sequel film.
What's your favorite part about The Last Jedi, Laura?
I think for me, it's really how much a bunch of fanboys disliked it. That's the only reason I like it. No, that's not true. I'm kidding.
Oh.
I really do. I legitimately love that movie. And I think for me, the Yoda stuff is really good in that movie. I love his whole conversation with Luke. It's one of my favorite things. And then the way that Rey talks about the Force in her vision while she's, sitting cross-legged on the rock with Luke, and she's talking about, peace, I see violence, I see, death that brings new life. She's got that whole sort of speech about the Force. And for me, that was one of the most like pure expressions in one of the best understandings, I think, of what George Lucas intended the Force to be and what Dave Filoni intends the Force to be when you watch things like the Clone Wars. And when you hear Dave Filoni just sit and talk about Star Wars, and when he talks about the Force, Rian Johnson really got it in terms of what exactly the Force is. And I really appreciated that, because I feel like there's a lot of stuff in Star Wars where maybe whoever made it didn't really get what it was. But I think Rian Johnson had a really firm grasp on it. And then the whole speech between Luke and Yoda, where Yoda's talking about how, we are what they grow beyond, was just one of those things that just kind of like stuck me like a knife and just stayed there. It was one of those things that that quote just stayed with me. And I think it must have just kind of hit me at a time in my life when I needed to hear it, probably. And I really appreciated that whole scene, which is weird because the first time I watched it, I was like, we're bringing Yoda into this? Feels like weird fan service. But it was like the second and third times I went and saw that movie that I was like, oh, this is actually really great. It took me a couple times. The first time I saw it, I think I was just in a little bit of like shock, because that was my first Star Wars celebration, was seeing the Last Jedi trailer in a room with a bunch of people and being really excited for it, and then having a whole year plus to like build it up and get more excited for it. And then it's just like there was no way any movie was going to live up to that amount of like hype and expectations that I had for it, until I sort of calmed down and sat and watched it a second time and sort of got to, sit with it and appreciate it more and understand what exactly they were going for. I think it took more than one watch for sure, especially with The Last Jedi.
It really is fascinating to see. I felt like I was there for like, even though I was in a Star Wars celebration, I felt like I was there for like the conversation surrounding the film before the film came out. And even after the film came out, there was like a good, I don't know if you're with me, Laura, because I'm sure you were noticing this as well, a good like month and a half where people were like, yeah, that was awesome. And then suddenly there was like a turn. And I don't even know where exactly I can pinpoint the turn, but I felt like it was kind of fascinating to hear the articles coming out from like your usual sources, like the IGNs and all that, talking about how the producers at Lucasfilms are so excited for Rian Johnson that they might even give him a second trilogy. That was coming out before the movie came out. They were so happy about what they delivered and that they saw the final cut of the film, and that the final cut of the film is amazing. And that it was going to be 2.5 hours, which people got even more excited for, because they were like, longer, it's better. And it's one of those things where it's kind of fascinating to see how people just turned on it so bizarrely, because I still feel like it's very bizarre, that turn. Because my favorite part of the movie, and this is such a simplistic view of the film because it's a very grand film, but I love the theatricality of the film, if that makes sense. And I've talked about this on Force Center, but my favorite part of The Last Jedi is the fact that it feels like I'm watching a play. Not just the biggest factor of this is obviously the dialogue. I feel like the dialogue is very purposefully grandiose, over the top, huge. The way that Snoke speaks to Kylo and gives him this big operatic speech, and he sits on his throne with 8 guards surrounded in a red giant room, and he's like, "Son of Darkness, Lord Vader," and it's like, it feels like very theatrical and very like old school theater, which is like a soft spot for me because I love that stuff. And the way Kylo speaks to Rey as well is very like grandiose and operatic, and it's really well done because it's still emotional and you could still feel the emotions there. But I love the way that Rian Johnson does like big scale, and you can feel every moment hitting regardless of what it was. But it mainly is, to me, like the Rey Kylo Snoke stuff to me is just perfect in that movie. But yeah, what a weird time to be a Star Wars fan. Speaking of which, RB3, let's go to the green Psylop. I don't know if you have that soundbite, but if you do, the green Psylop.
This little green Psylop.
Our green Psylop is very kind of what we're talking about now, which is your fandom getting into the Star Wars universe. Yeah. RB3 is like, we got to do it. They didn't hear it the first time. They're going to hear it now.
Sorry.
It's all good, man. I love it. My thing is, you got into Star Wars, really into it with The Force Awakens. I've spoken to a lot of people who have got into it from The Force Awakens. And I'm curious now, we're in a position in the Star Wars fandom now. Obviously, there's the divisions and all that. We can do an entire thesis statement on that. There's been people who've written articles about that, similar to what I think about it. But we won't do that today. What we will do is talk about where Star Wars is now, what we know they have greenlit as far as like what's coming, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, New Republic, Rangers of the New Republic is what I mean, the Boba Fett show, all this kind of new content that we have, as well as the High Republic. How do you feel like we're in a position now, Laura, to get new fans, to get it? I'm talking about like 12-year-olds, to get into the Star Wars universe. You think we're in a good place?
I think so. And I wonder how much they're sort of relying on the Bad Batch to bring that in. Because if you're talking about, 12 and 13-year-olds who now have easy access to Disney Plus and can sit and watch these shows start to finish. I mean, if you're going to get into the Bad Batch, realistically, you could just watch season 7, I guess, of the Clone Wars if you wanted to. But I would think that maybe something like that, and even what we got with The Mandalorian in the most recent season with the appearance of Ahsoka, that all of that would have been motivation to go back and start watching the Clone Wars from the very beginning. And I know quite a few people who did that, not maybe like one 12-year-old, but most of them were adults, funny enough, that always wrote off the Clone Wars thinking it was some kid show, but watched it and were like, shit, this is actually kind of dark in some parts, and it is. But I think that very much so, like, if you can get them, if you can point them to the Clone Wars, which The Mandalorian, I think, was really trying to do, I think you're going to be able to really hook them for something like the Bad Batch. I think that 12 to 13-year-old sort of demographic might be a good target for something like that show. That is an animated show and probably is meant to be targeted at kids in some sense, but I think it's also going to be pretty adult, I think, at some of its themes. That's just a guess, but I from watching the trailers and what we know about it, that's kind of what I'm kind of assuming.
Well, speaking of that, what do you think of everything that's been greenlit now when it comes to the shows? Because everything does feel like it's very much not about new fans. I don't know if you feel that as well, but whether it is the Obi-Wan show, the Boba Fett show, the Ahsoka show, the New Republic show, I could go on, the Acolyte, what else did they greenlit? The Cassian Andor show.
Yeah, there's going to be a Lando show.
All of that feels like established fan base, which is huge. Obviously, we can go on and on about how Star Wars is the biggest franchise. It still kind of is. There's a big audience there. There's no denying that. But how do you feel about that reaching out to new fans, and will that reach out to new fans?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is going to be, so much of it's going to stem from The Mandalorian, I think that was such a cultural phenomenon in a way that I wonder if even like Disney didn't anticipate. I mean, maybe they did, because they were just like, we've got this cute baby. They're going to love this cute baby. We do. But I sort of wonder if that's meant to be the entry point because when you think about something like Rangers of the Republic and Ahsoka, and we know that they're going to be taking place in the same timeline, and all three of these shows are going to culminate in some sort of event, I think is how they've referred to it. But I think The Mandalorian is really meant to be that thing. And we're not talking about The Mandalorian a lot right now because we're almost a year away, I'm guessing, from getting to see, season 3. So it's not really actively on our minds. But I think that is supposed to be kind of where it's drawing new fans in, because fans like you and me can sit and watch The Mandalorian and really appreciate all the little things that they're putting in that are references to the original trilogy and to the prequels. But you don't have to be, a hardcore Star Wars fan to enjoy the show. We get that little extra enjoyment out of it, but we would enjoy it all the same. And I wonder if that practice and the way that they structured the show to be that way, if that's going to be applied to some of these future shows where there's going to be multiple entry points into all of this new content we're going to be getting. There's going to be great stuff for you and me to enjoy because we can grasp all of the small little references that nobody cares about except us. And then it's going to be it's going to be entertaining enough to pull in new audience members that will then be like, oh yeah, I got to go watch The Mandalorian, it sounds like, because there's some kind of connection there. And then, oh, I got to go watch The Bad Batch because they brought that character in. And I think that's hopefully that's what they're going for, because if they're just relying on The Mandalorian, that's probably not a good move.
Yeah, well, speaking of that, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, do we even have a season 3 announcement?
I know it's been greenlit, and I know that they're working on it, and they've talked about that, but I think that, and I think they may have talked about it at the Disney Investor Day back in November, but I think they initially told us that we were going to have season 3 by the end of 2021, and then later they pushed it to early 2022. Okay. Yeah, we're a ways off, but it's definitely happening. Because,
holiday season 2021 is supposed to be Boba Fett, right? The Boba Fett show?
I think so, yeah. If maybe a little bit like Thanksgiving-ish. I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah, because
maybe it is mid-December. Yeah, I don't know.
I think so, and I think one of those things. It also kind of coincides with when is the Obi-Wan show going to drop then? Right.
That's I think 2022. I think I could be wrong, but they're starting production now.
They are.
But it's and they've got the volume, and that speeds things up, and that's great. But I doubt we're going to get a ton of overlap between all of this stuff, but
that's what I'm concerned about. But yeah.
Yeah. And even when you think about things like Marvel, like we're getting, the Bad Batch is probably going to be over by the time Loki starts on Disney Plus. We're probably not going to have overlap there either. So I think they're probably having to juggle a lot of pieces. Obi-Wan might be done sooner, but I would think that we're probably not going to get it until 2022 just to avoid the overlap. I just am not sure.
Yeah, I was assuming, I talked about it with Alex last week. I was assuming like late spring of 2021. I was thinking like summer maybe, either late spring or summer because of the quick turnaround and because we know they can do a quick turnaround. And because we don't know, at least, do we know how many episodes they announced?
I don't remember because it's either 4, it's 6. It's six because they have the writers, I think, listed on IMDb for that show, and there's 6 episodes mentioned.
Yeah, because I still feel like it's very possible that we can get it next late spring or early summer. I think that might even be a possibility, which kind of leaves Mandalorian. I still feel like Mandalorian season 3 is like in the most limbo because we don't have like any news from it like whatsoever, at least that I haven't heard. So yeah, it is kind of concerning, at least for me it is, but you're right, it really is the Baby Yoda effect of it all and how that got it really is. I've never seen so many random people who've never seen a Star Wars movie be like, yeah, Baby Yoda, and I'm like, how do you even know about that?
Right.
It really is kind of remarkable, but that did get new fans. That's a really good point. And a lot of kids saw The Mandalorian, even though it's not technically for kids. Obviously, kids can watch it, but it's a lot more kids saw it than I thought they were anticipating, I think. I think they were maybe targeting like people our age and ended up getting a ton of kids watching because of the Disney Plus effect. But yeah, I really do find it, I think it's fascinating what The Mandalorian has brought up, but then the way they decided to like they're like, The Mandalorian, look at this new original story we brought in with a lot of Easter eggs, but let's go back to Boba Fett. And I'm like, okay, sure. This is a reference to Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, a character that appeared in Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. Mainly, it's kind of, I don't know, do you find that odd or do you find that like perfect? Like, oh, it matches up because of the Mandalorian culture and the bounty hunter and all that?
You know, if he hadn't appeared in The Mandalorian, I would have thought it was weird, for sure. Because I'm like, you're talking about a character that, yes, appeared in the Clone Wars as a child, appeared in Attack of the Clones when he was a child, and then appeared in Empire and Return of the Jedi for like, what, all of 5 minutes total of screen time? So yeah, I would have thought that was unusual. But because they included him in The Mandalorian Season 2, I think it'll work. I think that that's going to probably push a bunch of people to go watch it. I just remember being surprised how many people were really, really excited about the Book of Boba Fett show when it was announced. And part of it was like, I think, you know, the hype of season 2 ending the way that it ended of The Mandalorian. But I think I just remember being very surprised kind of seeing people saying the same things that I was feeling, which is that I've always been kind of like pretty apathetic to Boba Fett. I just don't care. I really don't. It's never been a character that I've been into. And I often found that, you know, a lot of people who were, it was almost always guys. You know, I feel like there weren't a ton of like female gigantic Boba Fett fans. But then that was when I started seeing it. It was after The Mandalorian. I'm like, oh, there's a bunch of people now who are really excited about this character, and they're coming out and admitting it that they thought Boba Fett sucked too, and now they think he's awesome. So I'm like, yeah, same boat. That's me. I'm guilty 100%. But I think that you know, it's the Mandalorian effect, I think, of bringing in new fans in that same sort of sense. Even old fans were finding new things to be fans of.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I do remember that when the finale ended, and I was freaking out. But I was freaking out because of the Luke reveal. Spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it. And then a lot of people were like, "Yo, I thought the reveal was big, but you got to stick around for the after credit scene. It blew my mind. I'm so elated." And I'm like, and I saw it because I didn't at first. I clicked away, and I was like, "Oh, cool, a Boba Fett show, nice. This is not as exciting as people made it out to be." At least for me. But it's one of those things too where I don't know, I'm personally in a position now where I really do feel, and this is just me, and I know the chat's gonna explode, they're already exploding now, telling me about how much they don't like The Last Jedi, but I really do feel like there's something to be said about, as similar as that story was, Rey's story, to other stories we've seen in the past, or to the original saga story, I really do feel there's something to be said about how all the shows that are being greenlit right now are still like Obi-Wan, Boba Fett, Ahsoka Tano, New Republic, stuff we've seen in the past, nothing new, except for The Acolyte. That's the only one. And maybe Visions too. But again, that's a whole conversation about anime and the anime genre. I don't know how that's going to transition into Star Wars, which I had a conversation about that 2 weeks ago in my other episode. But I think my concern is, what about the fans what about like my nieces who are like Rey fans, don't care about Luke Skywalker or Boba Fett, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, I really do feel like Star Wars was like, everyone hated the sequels. We got to brush that aside and bring in all the favorites from Empire Strikes Back. And I'm like, is that what you took away from that? Because I think you guys are kind of missing the idea of creating new characters. Rey is a new character, Finn, Poe, and the idea of new fans coming into that and really enjoying it. And just because a lot of vocal white dudes on the internet didn't enjoy it, doesn't mean everyone didn't enjoy it. And I felt like Lucasfilm was very much like, oh crap, we got to get away from that. Got to bring back Boba Fett. And it's like, what? Why? I don't know. Is my concern valid? Because I'm sure everyone's telling me it's not valid, but sure.
No, I think it's totally valid. I mean, I totally agree with you, because you hear so many stories about people saying, you know, I grew up watching, you know, Return of the Jedi because there were cute Ewoks in it, and I got really excited because I was only 3 years old. So like that kind of stuff, like you need to have that component like to draw in those young fans so that they can eventually become lifelong fans. Not everybody's like me. I'm the weirdo that became a Star Wars fan as an adult. Most people became Star Wars fans as kids, which makes way more sense. But I think that something like what was it called? The Galaxy of Adventures series that was on YouTube, where it's like a 2-minute long show because kids' attention spans are getting way shorter and shorter as we go. I think something like that was a really great idea and really, really well executed, because they were really, I mean, some of those were really just beautiful stories to watch. I'm thinking specifically of the one of like Anakin and Obi-Wan, and you see Anakin grow up from like a small child into an adult. That was one of my favorite ones. But then there was Galaxy of Adventures, and now I'm forgetting the name of the one that was more female driven.
Forces of Destiny?
That's it. Forces of Destiny, okay. Where you had things like that did seem to be more targeted at children. And maybe even like Star Wars Resistance was sort of meant to be that too. But I imagine, I sort of wonder if maybe they're approaching that as sort of, I don't want to say second tier because that sounds bad, but we got all those announcements at Disney Investor Day. Maybe there's going to be some new stuff kind of coming up that's meant to be targeted toward a younger demographic that will just get announced later. And you don't have to worry about things like, is it overlapping with the release of The Mandalorian or Obi-Wan or Loki or any of the other shows that are going to be premiering soon on Disney Plus?
Yeah, I think that's kind of my thing, is like, I think people really underestimate the power of like original new characters. And I think regardless of how you feel about the sequels, it's new characters. It's something we've never seen before as far as the characters go, versus every other show that's been greenlit is characters we've seen before, which to me seems a little, I don't know, short-sighted. That's why to me, The High Republic was so exciting, because I was like, oh, here we go. New characters, new era, new opportunities to tell new stories. And that's why I'm curious what the Taika Waititi movie is going to be. And I'm curious if they're still going to go with the Rian Johnson trilogy and what that's going to be, if that still turns out to be the case. But I really do feel like new characters present an opportunity for new fans to be introduced into the world.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think you're right. And the High Republic books, I got to say, they're killer. The two that I've read, I haven't gotten to the Claudia Gray one yet, but I've really enjoyed the other two that I read. And one of them, I think, was the middle grade novel, A Test of Courage by Justina Ireland, was meant to be aimed at a younger reader. I enjoyed the hell out of it. So I highly recommend. If it's something that parents want to read to their kids or something, it might be a good one for something like that to sort of draw them in, especially to that new era. It was great characters, very compelling, and a entertaining story.
I always find it fascinating, and this will be my last point, but I always find it fascinating where I'm not even going to say, I shouldn't say this, but I'll say it anyways. I said it like 2 weeks ago, where our fandom is technically aimed at children. Technically, and we're obsessing over it, and I'm over here like on like fan boards when I was like a little kid, right, talking to like 30-year-olds, and then it's like the idea of like my love of like other franchises, like Hunger Games, for example, which is clearly aimed at teenage girls, and I'm over here like I'm District 7, and like waving my fandom around and all over Hunger Games Instagram and TikTok, which is a dying breed, but I'm still there, guys. I don't know. I just think it's funny how it's definitely not our age and we're still over here like, this is amazing. Let's finish up with our POC spotlight of this week. This week, I wanted to talk a little bit about Enfys Nest, who is a little bit back in the news because Erin Kellyman is currently in Falcon and Winter Soldier. She plays Carly Morgenthau, I believe, one of the Flag Smashers, or the Flag Smasher. But in retrospect, I really do feel like this is a character that got maybe 10 minutes of screen time in Solo, and yet left such an impact, at least to me personally. I wrote a little blurb about her in a Geeks of Color article, talking about how I consider her to be one of the best new Star Wars characters that are introduced in this new era. And her potential of just storytelling is just so high that I feel like those 10 minutes is never going to be enough for me. I need more Enfys Nest, but I definitely want to get your thoughts on Enfys Nest and Erin Kellyman as a whole.
I mean, I loved the character. I thought it was really clever how, we were sort of made to believe that Enfys Nest was a man through most of the movie. I think Val is the one who refers to Enfys Nest as a he at one point. So I think I was one of the people that was kind of surprised when the first time I saw Solo to see her pull the headdress off and see a sort of young girl behind that mask. But I think the downfall of that, of her being in the mask through most of the movie, was that I wasn't familiar with Erin Kellyman's work before I saw her in Solo. I don't know if she had really been in much. And for an actress of color to have that significant of a role, I mean, it was on a lot of screen time, but it's a fairly significant role in the story. And to have her only have her face on screen for something probably more like 3 minutes. I mean, if she was in the movie total 10, it couldn't have been much, where we're actually seeing her face. And then she couldn't be like, you know, they kept her out of all of the like interviews and kept her out of the spotlight and sort of the promotion of the film because they didn't want to reveal her as the villain. And I think a lot of that, it didn't do her any service. And I feel sort of bad for her in that sense, because Enfys Nest could be a really, really interesting character to run with and get more stories. And Erin Kellyman did a great job. And I'd love to see her on screen more and see maybe like the young years of the rebellion, where she's working with someone like Bail Organa to sort of get the rebellion up and running. Those kinds of stories would be really interesting, I think, to see with her. I thought she killed it in Solo, and I just want to see more.
Yeah, obviously your point is very well received. I've talked ad nauseum about the idea of covering up people of color, especially women of color, whether it be in makeup. I mean, every time you bring up, I can do a whole dissertation on the MCU and how everyone of color in there is either covered up or has barely any speaking lines. But it's definitely an issue, and I acknowledge it, which is why I want to see more of her. I think that's one of the opportunities that it presents, right? Where we see a little bit of a character that presents opportunity for so much storytelling. Like you said, you could do a whole Bail Organa storyline. You could do a whole like Cloud Riders storyline. We could do a whole crime syndicate show about her versus the crime syndicates. It would be awesome. I would love that, because you could kind of not hold back on the violence because it is the crime syndicates. And you can also tell a really compelling story. You could do Falcon and Winter Soldier and version of Star Wars, where it's like crime lords and crime bosses, governments, and what's it dealing with, but put it inside the Star Wars universe and do it like the Empire working hand in hand with the crime syndicates, the kind of stuff that they do on the side, the rival pirates and gangs that go against them, like the Cloud Riders. I think that'd be cool. I love Enfys Nest. To me, it's like the perfect character that embodies the rebellion inside a very like aggressive, powerful kind of way, but the way that she commands the respect of all these people around the galaxy, I think is really, really cool, because she is kind of like a ninja. They had to throw that in. They were like, yo, how are people going to be like, yo, this little girl's got it? It's like, why don't we give her ninja powers? And they're like, yo, that's it. She's going to kick Tobias Beckett's ass in the first scene in the movie. And we're all going to be like, yo, who's this ninja? Which I think is funny, because if you go to StarWars.com, as I did right before coming here, it actually says like her martial arts prowess, gives her like even more like allure and commands more respect, which I think is really funny, because again, me being a martial arts nerd, it's amazing. I really do feel like sky's the limit for her, and again, she looks like she's super young, so she could do this for a minute.
Exactly.
She's like a baby, so I think she can kill it if they ever do a series or a show or a spinoff. RB3, do you have any thoughts on Enfys Nest, man? I don't think I've ever asked you. I know you're watching Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah, really enjoying Falcon and Winter Soldier. I also enjoy her character a lot. By the way, before I joke about this every week, but we got to like write a script. Like, people, make sure you hit that like button. There's a few of y'all watching. We could do better with the likes. Hit that like button. Every single one of y'all hit the like button. It really, really helps get the show in front of more eyes, and really helps be more present in suggestion boxes and whatnot. So really, really, please, truly hit the like button. And start next week, we will be saying that at the beginning of every episode. And we also need to highlight and really need your support. We really need y'all support. $5 plus donations will be read out loud by the text-to-speech robot. So if you donate $5 plus, your message will be read out loud. And also, if you donate anything, we'll read your message. But if you donate $5 plus, it'll be read out loud by our little CPO, droid here ourselves. So, yeah, my thoughts on Enfys Nest. I really enjoyed the character. I thought it was an interesting like subversion on that, because like they really set it up as as kind of like the big bad, but there wasn't like a negative motivation per se. They're just seeking to protect their own people, if I'm not mistaken. And that's kind of like, and it's a little bit more of like a Robin Hood situation. It's more of like
she is Robin Hood.
Yeah, exactly. And then when you look at like the old, when you look at like old Westerns, because I feel like that's what Solo was based on a lot, old Westerns. That character would normally be the big bad, scary, Black Cat. That's what they call the villains back in like, the old movies. But it really just ended up being, like a red herring. It just ended up being like something completely different and threw you off. Yeah. See, there you go. So yeah, I really dug it.
Red hair.
Yeah. See, I didn't even come up with that pun, but
there you go, man.
Yeah, no, I really dug it. I thought her character's awesome. I like to see more of Enfys Nest in the Star Wars universe for sure.
Yeah, and I really want to give a shout out to everyone in the chat who's still here: Manny Gonzalez, Bradley Burnett, Andre Oliveira, who else? Nick Norenbaugh, Zeno Hour is here as well. Everyone who's stuck around, I really do appreciate you guys, and obviously we will be back next week. And I will say something at the top to please Sir RB3. But either way, Laura, thank you so much for joining us. Where can everyone find you?
Yeah, thanks for having me again, you guys. Come find me on Twitter. I am at shutup_Laura. You can find me on Instagram at that same handle. And then the show that I host with my friend Alice is Force Toast, a Star Wars happy hour. Episode 58 came out today, so you can go find that at all the great places you find podcasts. And then I host the Jedi Way with John Roca on his channel, and that's every other Wednesday or so. So check that out as well.
Nice. RB3, where can everyone find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Director RB3. You can also find this show or all of our First Cut programming here on our YouTube channel, First Cut. But you can also find it on Twitter through Periscope at First Cut TMO, and you can also find us streaming live on Twitch every single time we stream. We also stream live on Twitch, so be sure to follow us on Twitch at First Cut TMO as well.
Wow, look at that. Obviously, guys, you can find me at Squad Literates, and obviously subscribe to First Cut if you haven't done so already for more Star Wars conversation. We'll be back next week, and I will do that intro, RB3, just for you. Either way, guys, for the Sabacc the Block crew, we are peacing out. Peace.